All right, what I'm going to talk about now is the formula that we use to guarantee our success in the real estate investing market. As long as myself and my investors go by this formula and not go outside of this formula, we've always been successful, and so will you. If you stray away from this formula and go over these numbers, your chances of success are going to be less than if you follow this formula. There's only one reason you would ever stray away from this formula, and that is the only reason would be is if you're looking for a property for yourself. If you're looking for something that you want to buy and live in yourself, like I did, then by all means you can stray away from the formula and you're still going to have some good equity. But if you're looking to buy and resell or buy and rent, you want to stick to this formula. The only time I've ever went away from the formula is when I bought the house that you can see, you saw on the website and you see in the videos and stuff when I'm talking to you. I bought this house at about 50 cents on the dollar. It's a 7,000 square foot home with an in-ground pool, 3 acres with a pond out in front. And after we purchased it from the bank and did some things to it, it appraised at almost double what we purchased it for. So that's the only reason you ever want to stray away from the formula. Otherwise, stick to the formula to a T and you will be successful. This is probably the most critical part of real estate investing. You see people that find a certain property that they think is going to be really good, so they overbid it. I see it all the time when I bid against other people, and they just overbid the property. And the bad thing about that is you might like that property a lot, and that might be a great property, but you know what? There's 50 to 100 other properties out there just like it that you can go and make offers on and get. So don't stray away from the formula and you'll be fine. Basically what the formula is, and this is where it comes for your fair market value analysis or your after rehab analysis. And for the fair market and comparables, you can get those easily from the realtor that you're working with, or if you have your own real estate license, obviously you can pull up good comparisons for what the property should be worth and how you want to start bidding. But basically you never want to go over 70% of the fair market value, and that includes the purchase of the property plus the rehab. So with those two amounts combined, you never want to go over 70% of the fair market value. So let's do an example of that. Let's say that we're looking at a property and the fair market value of this property is $100,000, okay? So our max bid with the rehab costs involved is going to be $70,000, okay? And more than likely, I'd much rather get that property for about 65% of the fair market value. So, I'd like to get it for about $65,000 if I can. That gives me $5,000 to either put in my pocket or use for whatever other costs that might come up. And usually the way I start doing it is, I'll start bidding on a property at about 50% of the fair market value, depending on what the property is listed at. We see a lot of properties right now that that are $100,000 that might be listed at $60,000. So I'm going to bid. I'm going to start my bidding at about $15,000 below that. So I'm going to start my bidding at about $45,000, knowing that that $70,000 is my max bid. Now, don't forget, you also have to consider what your rehab costs are. So after you go look at a certain property and find out what the updates are that you need to do to that property. Let's just take, for example, it's $20,000 on this property that you need to do the rehab on. So if the comparables and the fair market value for this property is $100,000, and you know that $70,000 is your max, but you'd love to get it at for $65,000. With the rehab costs included, you don't want to pay any more than $45,000 for that property. Maximum $50,000 for that property. Okay, if it's listed at $60,000, and I'd like to get it for $45,000, I'm probably going to start at about $35,000 to $37,000. Now, to a lot of you out there, that might be like you might be going, man, this guy's crazy. You can't get properties, if a bank has it listed at 60 grand, you can't get that thing for in the 30s. Well, let me tell you, we do it every day. So don't let a realtor tell you that they won't submit an offer because they think you're crazy, because you're not going to get accepted at that. I can't tell you how many properties we get for 20 to 25,000 under what they're asking. And even the realtors that have it listed think we're crazy. But you know what? We've been doing it long enough now. We know what banks will take, especially when it's been on the market longer. Now, if a property's been on the market for less than 30 days, now they're not going to take 20, 25 less than what they're asking. But you know what? Eventually they're going to start dropping the price, and after 60 to 90 days on the market, they're going to start taking your offers and looking at your bids and at least counter offering. That's what you're looking for right now. It's just a counter offer. Okay? So once you start getting the counter offer, okay, I'd like to get this property for 45 grand, but if I have to pay 50, I will. But there's absolutely no way I'm going above 50,000, because the 50,000 plus the 20,000 in my rehab costs put me at my maximum of 70,000. And let me tell you what that 70% is for, okay? We do that, we stay at that 70% mark because that gives you $30,000 in equity to mess with, okay? Let's say you put that house on the market for $99,900, okay, to try to get a sale and try to get the full value out of it. And you get offers coming in and you only get $90,000 for it. Well, you still got 20% equity that you're still making off of it, okay? If you decide to wholesale the property to another investor that doesn't want to do the rehab, they just want nice properties that are already finished, completed rehab, and look good, you might sell it to that to an investor at 80% of the fair market value, so you're still making 10%. And the reason why we do that sometimes is you can make that 10% very quickly. You get a rehab, they might want to buy it within 10 days after that. So you might only be holding your investor's money for 45 to 60 days. So your interest payments are low, and you're still going to make a quick 10% on the back end. So you can still make a quick $7,000 to $10,000 and put it in your pocket within 30 to 45 days. If you're doing a couple of those at a time, you can see where it all adds up. I mean, right now, we're buying 10 to 12 properties every month, so you can see how that quickly adds up. And also you get that 30% equity in case for some reason the property doesn't sell and you need to lower the price of it. Maybe you go from $99,900 down to $89,900. Well, you still got that 20% equity, and even if you sell it at less, you can still make 15% on the property. So you can still make $15,000 or so on that property. So that's why we give that 30% equity, so you can never get in trouble and you're always making money on these properties. Another reason we do it is some of these properties are going to go, okay, I'm going to keep this one as a rental property. Now those properties, you're not going to put as much rehab money into it. So on a $20,000 rehab, you might only be putting $12,000 to $14,000 in that property. So now if you get it for 45, you got about 57,000 in the property. You go get a line of equity with the bank, and they'll give you, let's say, 75 to 80% of the appraised value. So you get $75,000 out of there to pay off your investor, and you'll still pocket a little bit of money. But with that equity position in there, your payments are low, and you can cash flow really well off of those properties. So as long as you stick to this formula and never stray away from it, you should be just fine. Now, you start paying 75, 80% of fair market value for these properties, you're just going to be hurting yourself and taking a risk and a chance of losing money in real estate investing. So just stay with that formula. It's 70% of the fair market value, and that 70% includes the purchase and the rehab cost of the property. Stick to this formula, and I promise you, you'll be very lucrative in the real estate investing business.